Hi booktube, it's Gina, and today I am going to do the last 10 books tag. I saw this tag over on Michael K Vaughan's channel. Michael is a relatively new booktuber, and this looked like a really fun tag to do, so I will tag him or link that video down below, and I'll also link the original tag video that Marc Nash created, which it's a fun video, and I think it's going the rounds of some of the new booktubers right now. I've seen a few people doing it and really enjoying it, so I thought I'd do it also. I feel like as a new booktuber, doing tags sort of helps me to think through my thoughts, come up with some things to talk about, and so I'm really enjoying doing tags. So question number 1 is, what was the last book you didn't finish? And I've got a couple on here that I'm going to talk about. I don't have a problem not finishing books. I mean, DNFing them. I don't feel obligated to finish anything, but I do generally keep them around because even if I don't finish it now, I know sometimes in the future I may want to come back to it. So unless it's something, which I'm going to get to in a second, that I just really absolutely didn't like, I'll keep it and try and get back to it. And the first one I'm going to talk about is David Copperfield, a classic. We've all heard David Copperfield by Dickens in this fun orange Washington Square Press edition, and I read about half of this. I enjoyed it, didn't enjoy it. I mean, it wasn't great, it wasn't terrible. I just didn't really, I kind of forgot about it. It just dropped off my radar about halfway through. So I would like to get back to this. I'm sure it's a wonderful book, but for some reason it just dropped off my radar and I never got back to it. So this one I will definitely go back to at some point. The next one that I didn't finish that I do also hope to go back to is Girl, Woman, Other. And I hope this doesn't get me into trouble, but I just couldn't get on with the writing style of this. It's different than anything else I'm used to. This is by Bernardine Evaristo, and it's got lots of great reviews and people really like it. But I couldn't, the writing style is very stream of consciousness. There's no punctuation. It's just lines with spaces. And I just couldn't settle into it. So I may try to come back to this one too. I'll keep it on my shelves. And hopefully I'll be able to find a time in my life when I can settle into it. The reason I do like to keep these though is because I did have the same thing happen last year with Oathbringer, the number 4 book in the, was that number 3? I already forgot. In the Brandon Sanderson Stormlight archives. And I read about half of that. I was slogging through it. I just couldn't get into it. But I knew I wanted to finish it because I had I read the other books in the series. And so eventually I did pick it back up and read it. It was a struggle because I, at that point, had sort of forgotten a little bit about what was happening, but I did finish it, and I'm on the fence now about Rhythm of War. I don't know what you all think, if I should pick that one up. I'm trying to debate on if I want to read that one, but that was a good example of one that I did put aside for a while and eventually went back to. Question number 2 is, what is the last book that you reread? And I do like to reread books. I've got a bunch that I read pretty regularly. My misread books behind me, those are great if I just want a cozy, kind of relaxing, brainless type of reading. I read those a lot when there's a stressful time. But the most recent book that I reread was Winter Solstice by Rosamund Pilcher. Or Rosamund Pilcher. I'm never sure if it's Rosamund or Rosamund. Winter Solstice. And this is a wonderful sort of romance book set in England in obviously the winter with some sadness and some happiness and wonderful characters. Rosamund Pilcher does the best sort of old lady characters, old ladies sort of anchoring the community or moving and falling in love. This is a book where the main character sort of has to leave her home suddenly to help to support a friend, and it's just absolutely wonderful. So this is great to read in the winter. Obviously, it's got great Christmas scenes. If you like a cozy winter atmosphere, I read this one pretty much every Christmas because it's so fun and cozy. And that's Winter Solstice. The last book that you bought. So just about an hour ago, I bought a Folio Society edition of Noughts and Crosses by Malorie Blackman. This book was on my TBR. I don't really know anything about it, and I don't want to know anything about it because I want to just read it kind of cold. But I subscribe to the Folio Society's YouTube channel, and they just popped up a video that I'll link down below that shows the author and the illustrator of this edition just talking about it briefly, and it looks wonderful. The illustrations are so nice. I just loved the style of this book. This is the first Folio Society book that I have purchased. They're on the expensive side, but this one, for some reason, it just struck my fancy, and so I bought it. I haven't gotten it yet, but I'll show it to you when I do get it, and I'll link that video down below. If you haven't seen the Folio Society YouTube channel, you should go check it out. They've got some beautiful, beautiful books. Question number 4 is the last book you said you read but didn't. And this book is, this is A Winter's Promise, translated from French, and it's written by Christabel Dabos, A Winter's Promise. And this is beautiful. Look at this cover. It's so pretty. And this book just ticked all of the boxes for books that I should enjoy. About a young girl who can sort of read things from objects that she touches. So if she picks up this book, she could be able to tell who touched it, what their history was, when it was touched. Like, she could just kind of get the past from an object. And she can travel through mirrors. This is a really interesting combination. In the first probably 20% of this book, I just absolutely loved. I thought, oh, this is going to be a 5-star read for me. She's in a big kind of house, and she's traveling around through her mirrors, and she doesn't want to leave. And all of a sudden, she is forced by her family to marry somebody that she doesn't want to marry. And it was so odd because I thought she was like 12 years old. So it's a very odd combination. I couldn't tell if it was supposed to be a children's book. I found it in the kids section at the bookstore, but there was lots of talk that it didn't seem would have been appropriate for kids in here. So it was just very odd. And by the time she got to the other world where she was supposed to get married, I just completely lost interest in this book. I didn't care about it at all. I did want to see what happened, I suppose, at the end, so I skimmed through about the last half and read the ending. And the only reason that I said I read it is because I hated it so much that I wanted to give it 1 star on Goodreads. Otherwise, I would have just DNF'd it and not thought about it again. But here it is. It's still sitting in my bookshelves because look how pretty that cover is. I can't make myself get rid of it, even though I really hated it. So I lied on Goodreads. I said I finished it because I wanted to give it 1 star because I wanted to be mean, I guess. That's a very odd thing to say. And I can't get rid of it because the cover's so pretty, but I'll never read it, and I'll never finish that last half. So I don't know, maybe I'm a little crazy, but the cover's so nice. Question number 5 is the last book you wrote in the margins of. And I don't think I have any books that I've written in the margins of. I read on my Kindle a lot, and sometimes I actually don't even really highlight in my Kindle now that I think about it. I just rarely go back to books. I read a lot of fiction, and it's not necessarily something that I need to go back to. I was an English major in college, and so, of course, back then I wrote books all the time. I don't have a philosophical objection to writing in books. I just don't feel the need to do it anymore. The last book you had signed. So I generally don't wait in line to get books signed. I can't even remember the last time I did. I was thinking about this question and kind of browsing through my shelves, and I do remember getting a book signed. This is Touch the Top of the World, A Blind Man's Journey to Climb Farther Than the Eye Can See by Eric Weinmeier. And he did the inspirational keynote address at a conference that I was at a few years ago. And it was fantastic. He really is an inspirational person. He climbed Everest and he's blind. And so this was his story of climbing Everest with his team that was supporting him, but as a person who can't see. And it was just so amazing. So amazing. And so I honestly cannot remember if I bought this book already signed. I remember waiting in line for it, but I can't remember if I waited in line and he actually signed it, or if I waited in line and it was already signed and he was just sitting there like saying hi to people. I think it was the latter, but I can't remember for sure. But this is the last book that kind of the person who was signing it was sitting there in front of me. I do have some signed books, and I do like to buy signed books if I can, because I do appreciate the author and the signature and the book as a piece of art almost. And I do have, I went through a phase a couple years ago where I subscribed to Powell's Books down in Portland, Oregon. I was working at the time in an office that was based in Portland, and so I spent a lot of time in Powell's Books. And they have a subscription service, which it's called Indispensable, and it is their version of a first edition signed book. So this one is The Mothers by Britt Bennett. And so they do their own version of the signed books. And I was really pleased with this for a while. This was a debut novel. I think I got Homegoing by Ya Jassy also. And I was really pleased with that. They're just typical signed copies. But then at some point, you can't really see it, but at some point I got Moonglow by Michael K Vaughan and Barskins by Annie Proulx, and I was more interested in the sort of the debut novels rather than the novels like these that are so well established. So I let that subscription lapse, but it's a really fun way to get books in the mail and to support a local bookstore, Powell's down in Portland. So I do have some signed books and I like them, but I generally don't wait in line to have a book signed. Question number 7, last book you lost. I can't remember ever losing a book. I'm sure I have, but I'm just going to have to skip this question. Question number 8, last book you had to replace. This is a little bit embarrassing, but I'm going to tell you this story because it might tell you a lot about me and my goofballiness. So the last book I had to replace was this book. It's Living a Beautiful Life by Alexandra Stoddard. This was a really important book to me, really through my whole life. I found it when I was getting ready to move out of my parents' house and go to college back in 1985 or 86. And I loved this book. I think it's so important to enjoy your daily life, your daily routine, make things attractive and pretty. And so this book really spoke to me, and it has spoken to me my whole life. I've always really liked it. But the original copy that I had bought, it looks exactly like this. The cover was different. It was the original cover. But I don't know if you can see, but it's got all this kind of blank space on the sides. And I didn't like that because I wanted to read it in bed, and I thought, I wish the book was a little bit narrower. And so keep in mind, this is about a year ago. I was not 10 years old when I did this. I thought, I'm just going to cut all the edges off of this book and make it a little bit skinnier so it's more comfortable to read in bed. I think you can see where this is going. Clearly, that did not work. You can't just take a pair of scissors and cut every single page in any orderly fashion on a book that you've had for a long time. So I pretty much just destroyed that copy, but I love it. And so I bought another one. It has a different cover. I probably should buy a used one that's got the same cover. But every time I look at this now, it reminds me of what a dingling I am to think I could actually like cut all of the pages to be smaller. Silliness. Question number 9 is the last book you had an argument over. And I wouldn't say I've had really any book arguments, but the last book that I read, my husband and I both read kind of close to each other, this was a few years ago, was The Little Stranger by Sarah Waters. And if you've read any Sarah Waters books, you know they're a little bit dark, gothic. This one had a little bit of a twisty-turny kind of ending. And we both got to the ending and I thought one thing happened and he thought something completely different happened. We thought it was a completely different ending. So I'm not quite sure. I'm still sure my version of the ending was correct. He's still sure his version of the ending was correct. So I won't say that we've argued over it, but it's really interesting that we both read the same book and had a completely different takeaway of how the ending was. So I think that's kind of a funny little story too. But if you haven't read The Little Stranger by Sarah Waters, it's wonderful. I read that on my Kindle. I don't have a copy of it, or I would be holding it up right now because I do really enjoy her writing. And question number 10 is the last book you couldn't get a hold of. And gosh, these days I find it so easy to buy almost everything that you want. I do like to try and find books used or secondhand. So a lot of it is just serendipity. But I'm reading the Three Musketeers for the March of the Mammoths. I don't know why I find that so hard to say. March of the Mammoths. It's not difficult. And I would have liked to find this in a Kindle version of this Lawrence Ellsworth translation, but I don't think it exists. I've looked it up. I've looked a couple places. It's not on Amazon. So I don't think they did this in a Kindle version, which seems very strange to me that a new release book would not have a Kindle version. But I have not been able to find it. So that's why I'm reading this a little bit more slowly, because I can only read it during the day when I'm sitting upright in a chair with a pillow on my lap that I can prop this up on because it's so chunky. So that was my last 10 books tag. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.